the premier family conferences held each year with international and national speakers and political leaders. Hosted by Family First New Zealand, the forum brings together a national network of family-focused organisations, scholars, lobby groups, church leaders and community groups who are part of a growing movement to bring New Zealand to a point where families are strengthened, marriage is honoured, life is protected and religious freedom is defended. This year's conference will again be held at the Dewdrop Event Centre in Manukau City, not too far from the Auckland Airport, on Thursday 28th of August and Friday 29th of August. Yes, because of demand, we're starting the conference earlier with 3 important sessions and a time of networking on the Thursday evening, and then a full-day program all day Friday. This year's theme is Courage at a Cultural Tipping Point. The culture is slowly but surely waking up to the harmful effects of the radical left-wing agenda and the destruction of family values that we all hold dear. Some countries have even figured out how to define a woman. And at this year's conference, once again, we have an amazing lineup of brave speakers from the US, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. Dr. Miriam Grossman last spoke at our forum in 2012. You may also recognise her from the recent Daily Wire documentary, What is a Woman? But more recently, she's released an important book on the transgender agenda. I'll be doing a live interview with Dr. Grossman from New York, where she is based. Jeff Johnson is an issues analyst for Focus on the Family in the United States. We're also very excited to have Dawn Hawkins discussing the issue of pornography and sexual exploitation. From Canada, we have Amanda Ackman bringing us a warning about the slippery slope of euthanasia. From Australia, we have Kirralie Smith, a wife, a mother, and an activist for biology and truth, but who is paying the price for speaking up. And for the first time in New Zealand, you will get to hear their side of the story. Israel and Maria Folau. Now we're hoping that they'll be able to attend in person. They're keen to be here, but it does depend on Israel's rugby schedule in Japan. But either way, we'll get to hear from them personally and not via the hostile mainstream media. And finally, we're hosting and recording a special episode of Straight Talk before a live audience at the conference. It'll be a lively discussion and you can be part of that live audience. I want to invite you to this year's Forum on the Family. It starts Thursday night, 28th, 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. and then all day Friday, 29th from 8:45 a.m. through to 4:30 p.m. It's the highlight of the year and you don't want to miss it. Arrange to be there. Book your flights today. Gather your friends. If you're concerned for our culture, our country and our families, you may be saying, what can I do? Well, step 1, attend the Forum on the Family. Have your spine stiffened by some fabulous speakers who will encourage, equip and inspire you. Now, the last couple of years have been sellouts, so don't delay. Go to our website, forumonthefamily.nz, for all the information you need. Register today. Don't miss this important family conference. Go to forumonthefamily.nz. Register today.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you on this rather chilly Auckland morning. I was actually better dressed, and then I began to feel freezing cold, so excuse me having thrown a sweater on. I'm rather chilly this morning, but warmed and heartened by having you all along. So welcome to Solid Ground, where we talk the issues both domestic and international which catch my eye, and often stories you won't hear in the mainstream or legacy media here in New Zealand. And we talk about them from an unapologetically conservative viewpoint, one based on good philosophy, good ethics, and we think good perspectives. Hence the title, Solid Ground. So if you're a first-time viewer, welcome. It's lovely to have you along, and to all our regulars, lovely to have you here too. Look, you'll be watching this, as you hear me say, every Tuesday and Thursday morning. People are watching this all around New Zealand and around the world and across an array of platforms. But if you want to have any questions, or rather, if you have any questions or comments, if you're on the Family First Facebook page or its YouTube channel, you're able to actually send comments to me directly here, which is fantastic. And then I do little things like this, and we've got the Family First crew reminding me that they're also up. But long and short, your questions and comments come directly to me here in the studio. So good morning, of course, to Edmund. We've got Jackie there. And Raitihi, Dee Dee is online, I can see that. To Ian, lovely to have you here as well. Lynette's telling me it's rather -2. Okay, you would need even more than a sweatshirt. I think it's about 5 degrees here in Auckland. So it is rather cold, which of course means that I'm having a fake background, as people can work out, because it's nowhere near this sunny at the moment. So look, lots to talk about today, and actually most of it's from overseas and most of it's from America. I want to touch on a number of judgments coming out of the Supreme Court. One, because I think actually they're quite good, but secondly, I don't think you've really seen any coverage of this here in New Zealand. I'm sure if you jump onto the likes of the BBC, CNN, Fox News, wherever you source your international news from, you'll have seen some reports, but I've not seen anything here in New Zealand. Hence, I'm going to talk to you about it this morning. And to Rosie, good morning. Lovely to have you along. And one thing that did catch my eye, which I'm not going to go into at length today, but this is from Simply Green. Yes, it's long and short, the euthanasia issue. This is a good example. People are firing through questions and comments, which I can respond to. I think I know who's behind the Family First comment, by the way, with things like this. So it's 9 degrees where my colleague is. I won't out who it is, but yes, it's rather chilly where I am at the moment. So Simply Green was raising euthanasia as Canada's first or second leading cause of death. I certainly know now, is it 1 in 20? No. God, I've all of a sudden forgot the stats. 1 in 5, I apologise. 1 in 5 deaths in Canada is now via euthanasia. So that's right up there with many of the, if you will, leading causes of death. I've actually got I might try to get to it on Thursday, of what's happening in the UK, because I actually wrote recently an article into the Telegraph in the UK. It's interesting, media here in New Zealand won't publish much of what, if anything, of what I write. Strangely enough, papers in the United Kingdom and elsewhere will. That's quite striking, I think, and tells you that a lot of the bias and operation here in New Zealand. Anyway, I'm getting terribly distracted. Fantastic. Edmund's noting that he's sharing this across his Facebook and X. It's marvellous. Thank you. And by the way, you're always very welcome to share all and any content from Family First. You can obviously share these lives, but also we've got a lot of content on the Facebook page. We have a lot of content there as well. Anyway, and Simply Green's just noticing, again, this is the Canadian euthanasia experience, how it accelerates. And it definitely does. It's the warning that myself and others gave the New Zealand Parliament when we sadly saw the euthanasia law pass. It's not actually a slippery slope, it's a cliff. And it very, very quickly accelerates, to use that term, because once you've passed it in law, and as we're seeing here in New Zealand, and we here at Family First have been ringing the alarm bells, the pressure is on, once it's made legal, to then make it moral. And so huge efforts are being put in place now to force more and more euthanasia. So they want to remove conscience rights from doctors and nurses. They want euthanasia to be happening in hospices. At the moment, hospices will decline. They say, look, we don't want to be involved with this. It's the antithesis, the opposite of what we do. But the Ministry of Health here in New Zealand is determined at this point to force them to allow it to happen. You see the puff pieces in media about the various deaths. There was that author in New Zealand, Morris G. I can't remember. But long and short, his death has been celebrated. It was plain and simple a suicide, but the media actually turned it into something supposedly more romantic, which is very sad to see. I see in the news article about it that I was mentioned that he had actually written to me a few years back when we had the euthanasia debate, myself and Nick Smith, asking for us to vote for it. I don't recall receiving that letter. I'm sure I did, but when you literally receive hundreds of bits of correspondence, both letter and emails, a day, and that's no exaggeration, as an MP you get 100 to 200 emails and letters a day, I actually don't recall. But as I watched the coverage of his death, I just think it's exceptionally sad. Exceptionally sad. It's been put forward as euthanasia, but interestingly, from what I could see in the reports, and again, it's dancing slightly on the head of the pin, the articles are, is that he didn't want anyone to be around him because he was operating outside of the euthanasia range, which again just shows you the suicidal ideations which are in play. And the other thing I noted from it too, of course, is all the drama that supposedly was happening to him, that he could have no one around him. Well, that's not society's issue. That was his. That was his issue. He made a series of decisions. And this is the strange element of all this talk of autonomy around euthanasia and other ethical issues. I want my autonomy, I want my choices, I want to do what I want, is one of the big arguments when it comes to euthanasia. And yet here, when he's made choices to end his life alone, the blame seems to be put onto everybody else. Well, that was part of his choice. He made those choices. He died the way he wanted. And, as I'm doing this morning, I'm choosing to call it out for what it was. I think it's a very sad situation with this older man prematurely ended his life. And I think it's absolutely tragic for him and his family, and it will have repercussions in his family through generations. There's a trauma which actually comes with this. Whether people recognize it or not, it's real. Anyway, I've gone off on a huge tangent, which I'm always happy to do if people know me. As Simply Green's also noted, mixing euthanasia, palliative care, absolutely it's a terrible, terrible idea. And as Edman also notices, how do they know what's going on? I mean, this is one of the fundamental issues. If you go into a care home or a hospice, you want to know that the doctors and nurses coming in to see you every day are there to care for you, not to kill you. It's a very simple point, but it's one of the things which I always quite keen to drive home, is for people to understand once you open the door to euthanasia, it completely changes the nature of medicine. Again, even if you're in hospital, you're going to have to start asking the question, as they do in Canada, as we were saying, 1 in 5 deaths now is by euthanasia. Is that doctor or nurse coming in with a needle there to give you something to help you or to kill you? You just don't know, will you? So it's very, very... oh yes, Jackie saying Logan's Run. I think I'm aware of the show. But I don't recall watching it. You might have to explain. I'll have to look up Wikipedia afterwards and refresh my memory. Anyway, as I say, a lot to discuss. We started, of course, at the start of the show. I just run before 7:30 the ads for the Forum on the Family. August is coming around real soon. It's July now, of course. We're heading towards summer, people. We had, as I mentioned the other day, the winter solstice is gone. The only way is up. We're heading towards summer, and that means we're almost into August, which means the Forum on the Family. So do go and check it out. It was sold out last year. It's going to sell out this year. So we'd love to have you all along. But as I say, keep saying overseas. A couple of bits of news. One's coming out of the United Nations. I wrote about this onto the Family First website the other day, and I think I published it to my socials. I'm not always a great fan of the United Nations. I think a lot of what it does is misguided and irrelevant. But this was one, I thought, very fascinating report that came out from what's called the Special Rapporteur And on very long title, it's the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls. And her name is Reem Assalam, if I've said that right. She's the Special Rapporteur. Long and short, has written a report basically pulling out two things. One is the terms like women, girls, and other female terms. So talking about mothers, talking about pregnant women, not birthers. She says, look, we need to tie language to biological reality. Woman has to mean adult human female. And she's saying that these attempts by trans activists and others to remove female language is in effect an act of violence. In fact, she's got this quote here, which is from Binary. It's an Australian organisation. In fact, we've got Carolee Smith coming to the forum from what's known as Binary in Australia. I think I've got that right. We definitely have Carolee coming. She's going to be amazing. Anyway, as it says here, erasing women's specific languages and needs based on sex is not only wrong but also demeaning, regressive, and she says constitutes one of the worst forms of violence that women and girls can experience. I think that little bit for me is slightly over-egged. I don't like conflating physical violence with, if you will, emotional violence. I mean, in the most strict sense, she's correct. You know, when you choose to use demeaning language, when you try to change the nature of words and meanings on people, that is, in the strictest sense, a violent act. So you could argue, but I think in the general parlance, the way that we talk about it, it's not quite right, but I think it's truly a major problem. And so she nails it. Again, basically trying to remove the notions of female in the names of inclusivity is deeply problematic, and I think it's great that the UN is calling it out. The second is that she says there's no place for this gender-affirming care, supposedly, rather the term gender-affirming care, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones and surgeries on children. So she's making a really specific, line in the sand here. You know, adults can probably make their own choices by her thinking, but she's saying for young people, it's deeply inappropriate and it should be stopped. And again, I think that's a major win, actually, of all things coming out of the United Nations. And as you can see here, this is from a report from the ADF, great organisation that we engage with here. It's out of the United States doing some amazing work, but as it says, as a summary, and we've done one on the Family First website, there should be a prohibition of any transitioning of children, be that social, legal or medical. The main point that the rapporteur is pointing to is that children cannot consent. There's no way they can consent to these procedures, and therefore it's been forced on them. And look, we know this. We know with all this transitioning stuff, and again, the obsession with the activists and the lobbyists who are adults, and some in the medical profession, their obsession with children, to change them is appalling. Again, first and foremost, no one is ever born in the wrong body. We might have issues with our bodies might have issues with us, but no one is born in the wrong body. And the thing we need to do as a society is to affirm the children as who they are, not to lie to them that they can change their sex, that a whole pile of drugs and mutilations is going to change them. As the Special Rapporteur points out, that isn't change, it's actually just attacking them. And I would argue, literally attacking them when it comes to these doctors doing the mutilations, and it is mutilations of their body. It's this irrationality which somehow exists in our society now, where we believe terribly false things such as you can change your sex. It's not. In fact, the UN report pushes an interesting point, which is so many of these lobbyists, the LGBTQI plus lobbyists, basically demean women by simply defining them by the way that they act and dress. And so when you think of the likes of drag, which is really just taking feminine aspects and exaggerating them, that is not what a woman is. A woman is so much more, which is why, of course, these activists attack language. You know, being a woman is one of, there's many things to being a woman, but obviously having the ability to bear children is a great gift. Yet this is an area that these activists attack. Again, you don't want to talk about mothers anymore. We have to talk about pregnant people and so forth. Anyway, you can see all the dynamics in play. And so great that the UN in this case is pushing back, or the special rapporteur. I'm sure there's going to be a variety of views. But this is, again, another chink in the armour of these people who are obsessed with children and obsessed effectively with abusing children. And I am in no doubt that in years to come, within a decade or so, we will look back as a society in horror that this was allowed to happen to children. Absolutely, absolutely appalling. Anyway, I'm going to turn to the Supreme Court. I should have asked you what you think this is. This is the Supreme Court in the USA. And I said right at the start, before I happily got distracted, that there's quite a lot of judgments which have come out of the Supreme Court of late, which you are not hearing about here in the New Zealand media. And why you're not hearing about them is that they are significant, and significant wins for right, for good, for ethically sound thinking, and for good conservative causes. And that's why you're not hearing about them. So I'm just going to take you through. There's about 3 or 4 of them. One is here, and in no particular order. Texas basically was saying children under 18 or people under 18 are not to see pornography online. The porn industry pushed back and said, well, no, hold on a moment, the First Amendment. Because as we've discussed before here in New Zealand, even around the social media ban, to work out if someone is 8 or 13 or 18, you need to know everybody's age. So, the porn industry were pushing back to say, look, we don't want to be showing porn to under 18-year-olds, but this now infringes on everyone 18 years and older because everyone has to be verified. And a lot of people want to basically hide that they're watching pornography, so they don't want to have to show their driver's license or passport or whatever. That's failed, and I think for good reason. The Supreme Court says, hey, look, we understand there's freedom of speech. We understand that people do want to have a degree of privacy. That's fine. But we also have to weigh up the rights of children. And young people accessing and seeing pornography is not good for them. In fact, it's downright harmful. And we're going to hear about that at the Forum on the Family. And so I think the justices, says me, who is not a Supreme Court justice, have done the right thing. They've balanced the various competing rights. And I do say that quite genuinely, even though this is around the pornography side of things, there are competing rights here. There is, in the case of America, the First Amendment, free speech. People are allowed to say, do, see what they want. There's also, if you will, a right to privacy. But that has to be balanced, as the Supreme Court has done, with the rights to protect children. So I think this is a good move. And again, the Supreme Court has said Texas is allowed to block access to pornography of those under 18. And I think that's just a very smart move on behalf of the Supreme Court. And again, it's about balancing rights. And I think one of the things I always come back to in this space, rights are often having to be balanced against one another. It's why even free speech, for example, has limits. You're allowed to think and say what you want, but the moment you start using that speech to incite violence, then you've crossed a line, because of course people have the right to safety. I think, Catherine's just noting, just looking at the comments here while I also take a swig of coffee, some sort of ID, at the digital ID question. That's certainly a big debate at the moment. Certainly here in New Zealand, of course, does everyone now need a digital ID? There's sort of 2 quick thoughts on that. One of them, I did a podcast recently with a woman called Melissa Mackay. She's from Utah. Long and short, she's targeted successfully through law. She's not a lawmaker, she's a mother, but a lobbyist into this space, is young people being able to download apps to their phones. That's where you restrict. In other words, when you go onto a Facebook or YouTube, you're not having to hand over any digital ID. You don't have to hand over digital ID, but you do, well, already, this is her point, you already need to verify who you are when you sign up to Apple or to Google. And so, as in the Google Play or Apple Store, you have to verify your age. And so that's the point where you stop young people accessing. So in other words, they don't have to age verified to be on Facebook. They can't download the app. Yeah. All right, and good morning to MKI. Lovely to have you along. Right, time is ticking away as usual. I'm prattling along. So I talked about Texas. The next one, actually, I'm going to take another drink. Still coughing away here. It's terrible, and I'm not even sick. Another one was this coming out of South Carolina, which is allowing that state to defund Planned Parenthood. And again, the Supreme Court has said it's fine. So as you can imagine, Planned Parenthood and other abortion supporters were up in arms that the state could stop using Medicaid funding. I'm not going to go all into Medicaid, but it's a big social program in the United States. And in South Carolina, they've said, look, we don't want to be funding an abortion provider. We don't see it as healthcare. If you want it, if it's your choice, you can pay for it yourself. Which, has some merit to it. It's a bit like the earlier example around euthanasia. It's all about choice, but then throughout that, there's always these, oh, hold on, but I don't want this part of the choice, or everything else that's happening, I blame others rather than my own choice. So, Edmund's noticing I'm coughing because it's probably cold. That's probably true. Anyway, the state is saying, well, look, we don't want to have Medicaid. We don't want this federal funding and our state funding going to fund Planned Parenthood. We don't like what they do. We don't see it as healthcare. As you might expect, they tried to push back Planned Parenthood and they failed. The Supreme Court says no. They're well within their rights to decide how to use that funding. Very much a protection of states' rights. In other words, some states, I have no doubt Gavin Newsom and his friends in California and the Mad Muppets running New York, for example, will be, and it seems to be going even crazier over in New York by the look of the mayoral voting at the moment. Every state is allowed to make its decisions how it wants to. And in this case, South Carolina is saying we don't want to fund these guys. And the Supreme Court said, yep, we agree. You're allowed to do that. Then also very significantly coming out of Tennessee, they had banned what they call that gender-affirming care. Again, it's the mutilation of children, the pushing out of puberty blockers and so forth. They said, no, we're not allowing this to happen to young people. Young people, they cannot consent. Again, the LGBTIQ plus, whatever it is, activists pushed hard to say, no, it's infringing the child's rights. They should be free to accept these treatments. The Supreme Court said, no, that's not the case. And this is probably very, very significant. Again, a big block of the wall of the supposed trans rights being dismantled. Again, you just have to remember we're talking about children here. And just like the UN Special Rapporteur that I mentioned earlier, as she noted, children cannot consent to this. And so the Supreme Court's weighed in basically from a child's safety side. And I think for me, it's always important to make this distinction. As an adult, if you want to do crazy things to a degree, you can. I still think we need to put guardrails around. We still need to have our laws based on good ethical framework. So it's not about a libertarian perspective of do whatever you want. But if an adult wants to take, cross-sex hormones, well, all power to them. We shouldn't have to pay for it, but if they want to, that's their choice. We can try to encourage them in a different way. But we're now talking children. So the state of Tennessee has done the right thing, which is no, we're not going to allow this to happen to children. We're there to protect them. And the Supreme Court has said, yep, we agree. You're allowed to pass these laws. Again, if you will, the freedom of medical choice versus the freedom, I would argue, to be a child. So again, very, very successful. And then actually in a more general political way, this is a very significant victory, not just for Donald Trump, but it'll be for future presidents. The Supreme Court has said that lower courts, very junior courts in the United States, cannot keep stopping a president doing what they're doing, which is probably a very bad way of explaining things. So as you might know, they have a parliament, in effect, their Senate and House of Representatives, but the president, in this case President Trump, has executive powers. Presidents can, literally by a stroke of a pen, create laws within some frameworks, but let's not get too specific. But presidents can create laws. They call them executive powers. What we've been seeing, not just in the Trump presidency, but certainly on overdrive when he is president, is every decision he makes, whether it's around, let's say, migrants, drug policy, whatever, instantly, opponents go running off to the courts, again, which they're welcome to do, and then you have some judge in the middle of nowhere, a very low court, putting in an injunction. And what happens is that, the new executive orders get stopped, and then it has to be appealed, and then it's appealed again. It goes on and on and on. And so the Supreme Court has said that's just not actually good or democratic. The president's allowed to be the president. He's allowed to sign, in this case, his executive orders, and they shouldn't be frustrated by a barrage of small courts and judges basically overriding what the president wants to do. Obviously, higher courts, more senior courts can. And look, speaking personally, I think that's appropriate. Again, for me, this is not about Republican or Democrat, Trump or anyone else. When you're the president, you've been elected, and you are working within the legal frameworks and making executive orders, they shouldn't be frustrated by very junior judges. More often than not, those judgments get overturned very swiftly, but it's costly both in time and money. So again, a huge victory, because basically what this means for Trump and future presidents is their executive orders will not be frustrated, as I say, by a barrage of very junior courts. Challenges will have to be done by much more senior courts within the system. So again, huge victory. And then just to round it out, because again, you don't get too much coverage of this here. Not only has the Trump administration, or the Americans, seen an end to the Israel-Iran situation, a remarkable, in many ways, a remarkable situation. But a peace deal has been now signed, I think it was a few days ago, between Rwanda and the Congo. They've been fighting for a long time. So President Trump had hosted them, and so there's another peace deal. And look, it's just something you won't hear in New Zealand media because it's all to do with Trump. And you don't have to like the man or not. Some of you will like him, some of you won't. Excuse me. Didn't mute quick enough, sorry. But, at the moment, there's a lot of good things happening. As I say, there's a ceasefire of a sort, or a suspension of hostilities, at least between Israel and Iran. We now have this peace deal between Rwanda and Congo. I think I read, though I haven't verified, that Syria is joining the Abraham Accords, which means it's recognizing Israel, which in itself is significant. And then, as I say, you've got all of these court cases, which the Supreme Court, let's be fair, this is not Trump per se. This is the Supreme Court's judgments, which I just think are amazing. They really are. Anyway, guys, I'm conscious it's 8 o'clock. I've prattled on for too long. A couple of last notices, as you always know. So look, register for Forum on the Family. It is going to be awesome. Obviously, we have our shows every morning. Bob will be back tomorrow and myself on Thursday, which will be amazing. Speaking of Thursday, we've always got political playback. I'm actually pulling together some of the topics as we speak. No shortage of political topics here, domestic. Bob and I focus on domestic politics by and large of what's happening in New Zealand. And so join us for that. Another podcast will be dropping tomorrow, but my most recent one is with Karen Horan, an amazing woman, 2-time breast cancer survivor, mother of 3, does a lot of mindfulness and wellness coaching. She's just amazing. I deal with her a lot with a different hat on, but she's amazing, and so that's a real great podcast to listen to. Bob continues to be exceptionally busy with his Substack, so make sure you go to substack.com and check out his, and you can jump on to substack.com and find mine as well. I've got to hurry up and actually write my next one. I've been a bit slow over the last few days. And know that you can always jump on to RCR, the Reality Check Radio. I host a show there. So you're all very welcome to keep engaging, not only with Family First, because of course if you jump onto the Family First website, not only can you access these shows and podcasts and Nick blogs. There's lots to read there as well. And also now we're on Spotify, so you can listen to it that way, or listen to us there. Anyway, guys, I better, if you will, love you and leave you. You've got a big day ahead. I'm going to go and wrap up even warmer and deal to this light cough that I still seem to have. But lovely to have you all here. Look forward to joining you again on Thursday morning.